Welcome to Education in Focus. I'm your host, Eliana Kernodle. Michigan lawmakers are working to become the 38th state to host a Purple Star program in schools, which would help accommodate students who often change schools due to parental military service. Earlier this month, the Michigan House of Representatives passed House Bill 4027, which would create the framework for Michigan to certify schools to ensure resources and information exist to help military children who relocate often. Joining me to dig into this is Chalkboard News editor Brendan Clary. Brendan, tell us more about this bill and the Purple Star program.
Yeah, absolutely. So this was hailed as a win from a Republican. Michigan has democratically controlled House, and so I think this is one of those pieces of legislation where it did get that bipartisan support and was hailed as a win there. And now, it's in the Senate. Essentially, the Purple Star program creates a special designation for these schools that are thinking about and have specific requirements for how they handle the students of military families, and specifically would ensure that they're getting what they need to survive, thrive academically, not just survive. And so that's an important part of this, and it's trying to think about how much military families move and try to create like a support system at a school sort of built in, right? If you move to a new school, then those families are being greeted with these certain kinds of expectations, and that would be across states too, ostensibly. So that's an interesting thing. Another interesting thing is that these are there are states that have passed this program, like they have funding for it, and so that was one of these situations with Michigan, is that there was a funding bill that allotted money and sort of said that we're going to back this program, but there's not something that has been codified for the Department of Education. So this would require the Department of Education to have these certain requirements and sort of spell out the intricacies of the program. And again, it's not like a huge bill. It's only 4 pages long, right? This is not like a big piece of legislation, but it has the specifics there for what it says that the department shall do in order to create the Purple Star program. So specifically, it focuses on allowing public schools to apply to receive like this Purple Star program school designation, and that it would have these like specific criteria, including having a staff member become what's called a military liaison. And so that they would find students who belong to military families, and then basically become the person to work with them and their families, and figuring out what they're eligible for, different kinds of like counseling, mentoring, volunteering opportunities, support services, and then have like a page on the school website that says these are resources for military families, basically just kind of going out of their way to be accommodating for military families, with that understanding that they're moving a lot. And then another key part about it is a transition program led by pupils that assist military-connected pupils in transitioning to the public school. So like you have kids from military families helping other, military family kids. And then professional development for staff members of the public school on issues that are specific to military-connected pupils. And I think that you can see some of these in the law. I think you can see like why certain associations that maybe have professional development might be interested in. Like this is kind of a specific carve out, and you can see how there'd be an opportunity to like maybe to jump in here and say like, oh yeah, like we are one of these vendors that can offer military focused professional development for your teachers. So I don't know, that's something that we can watch and see, like, is there a kind of a cottage industry that's gonna spring up from this, or who is a big player there? That's one of my questions as a journalist, is where's the money going because of new laws? It's just something to think about. So there are these, and then it defines like what does armed forces mean, and it's pretty clear, I think, but it kind of spells out that stuff too. So it's really a basic, and it also applies to students whose parents died in the line of duty, right? So that's another key there as well that it spells out. So there's a lot of different kinds of technical things there, but that's what it's doing. It's creating a program and saying here's the parameters, and taking that funding and putting it into the specific thing and making it more actionable, it sounds like.
And you mentioned that it passed the House, it's in the Senate now, so it's not quite law yet, but it's getting there.
Yeah. So it's a good sign that it went through the House, especially with some of I live in Michigan, so I'm more aware of, some of it has that Democrat that controlled in the House, the Senate, and the governor's office. So to get through all three, would have to really be a bipartisan effort. And so I think that is a good sign that it's gone through the House. But, it's far from being law yet, but it is a good sign. And I think that there are people who do want that. Then there's a lot of other states that have already done it. So that's a key thing to point out. So there are, the Department of Defense has a policy website where they track, it's called the State Policy Source. They track some of these things for military families. And I didn't really know about this until I was editing this piece. But there's really only, I believe, 6 or 7 states that have taken no action. Some of them have some of this funding. Some of these have introduced legislation that would fund the program or sort of get it going, even if they haven't had something codified all the way, or had a bill go through all three houses and become the law of the land. But maybe they've had some appropriations directed toward it. And that kind of thing. But there's only a handful of states that haven't taken any action on this. And so I think that's, it's more of the trend than the other way. So I think that also explains why there's a little bit of what I talked about between having the funding and then also having, the implementation legislation. That might explain a little bit of that discrepancy between what the Department of Defense says and sort of the tracker on how many states have done it. So Michigan is trying to might become the 38th state, but there's, far more than that have taken some action, it sounds like.
Well, Brendan, thank you for your insights on this story. Listeners can keep up with this story and more at chalkboardnews.com.